On today's show, why the Houston Rockets are unlikely to extend Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun this offseason, as well as NBA free agency underway. The Rockets re-signing Aaron Holiday to a 2-year, $10 million contract, plus other NBA free agency news and notes and how it impacts the Rockets. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's that wonderful time of year where NBA free agency is in full swing, even if it is a little underwhelming for your Houston Rockets. What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the best way you can help our show is to go comment anything below the YouTube video. Just swing by and go say Go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more this summer, as FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. A lot to get to on today's episode. We're going to be tackling why the Houston Rockets are unlikely to be extending Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun this offseason, as well as tackling all the related NBA free agency news and notes. A bit of a quiet free agency for the Houston Rockets. They did re-sign Aaron Holiday to a 2-year, $10 million contract. More on that in a moment, as well as other notes from around the league and what it means for the Houston Rockets, particularly what it means for the Western Conference going forward. But where we're going to start is this, topic that has been ongoing, rampant amongst Rockets fans in the social media space. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, wondering why I'm all decked out, I'm fresh off of the Reed Shepherd press conference as I'm recording this, so we'll have that, some thoughts on that in our very next episode. So be on the lookout for that. But the topic of the extension conversations for Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, both of whom are eligible for their rookie scale extensions, rookie extensions, I should say, with some arguing, obviously max extensions in favor of Sengun, possibly for Jalen Green. But here's the rub. And it was first reported by Jonathan Fagan a while back that the Rockets were unlikely to extend them. Then the reporting doubled down. Kelly Iko circled back, shared the same sentiment. And there is a very vocal minority of fans that are upset about the idea of not extending Alperen Sengun, feeling that he has deserved the rookie scale max extension. Especially when you look at other organizations like the Pistons, who gave Cade his rookie max, or the Raptors, who gave Scotty Barnes his rookie max, players that are at least comparable, or some would even say not as good as Alperen Sengun currently is or was this past season for the Rockets. So this conversation is mostly going to be focused on it from the Alperen Sengun angle, because I can tackle the Jalen Green angle very quickly here. Jalen just hasn't done enough to earn a rookie max extension yet, right? He was really bad for 2/3 of the season. Yes, he had that incredible surge, late in the season, looked amazing in the month of March, and, closed out the year on a strong note, but there are still some question marks about him moving forward, right? So the responsible thing for the Rockets front office to do is to make him a restricted free agent, right? Extend the qualifying offer, and then revisit this discussion, at least Jalen Green next summer, right? If he balls out, if he looks incredible in year 4, awesome. You give him the rookie max next summer. He doesn't miss a dime. The extension wouldn't kick in until after the 4th year anyway, so the 5th year that he would be in the NBA. Cool. No harm, no foul. As simple enough on the Jalen Green front. Now, the Alperen Sengun front, a little bit trickier. And there are some important analogs here. There's some comparisons we're going to make, and I'm going to try to make this argument as succinct as possible. But the reason this is even a topic of discussion is because Alperen Sengun, despite being the Rockets' best player, and despite, probably really realistically earning every cent of that rookie max, which he deserves. He deserves the rookie max. I'm not going to say he doesn't. He absolutely has earned it with his play this past season. And if the Rockets were in a position like the Pistons or the Raptors, where they were a bottom dweller team in the NBA and they were going to be, years away from any level of relevant contention, I would say absolutely give him the rookie max, call it a day, figure it out later on. However, there are a couple logistics here that matter. Because Alperen Sengun was drafted in the middle of the first round, his effective cap hold this next summer on his rookie scale deal is significantly less than the cap hold of one Jalen Green. So for Jalen Green, the Rockets could give him his rookie scale max right now. I'm not saying he again hasn't earned it yet. They could give him his rookie scale max, and the cap hold would be negligible at best, right? It would be a difference of maybe a couple $1 million tops. For Alperen Sengun, the cap hold is much more significant, right? It's somewhere in the realm of the Rockets are able to, generate an additional, like anywhere from, I want to say 15 to 20 million. I'm going off rip here on the numbers. Point being is that by not extending Alperen Sengun right now, the dollar figure that impacts the Rockets next summer 2025, is significantly less than what it would be if they extended him right now and then that extension were to kick in next summer. Because of that, it will allow the Rockets, by not extending him right now and by making him a restricted free agent, he goes through this next season, he can get the extension next offseason, whatever. By waiting to do that, it gives the Rockets financial flexibility, very important financial flexibility, to potentially be able to add a significant piece as the Rockets look to take that next step in their contending timeline. And I'll draw a very important comparison here. The Philadelphia 76ers literally just did this with Tyrese Maxey. So the 76ers were able to generate maximum cap space and sign Paul George outright this offseason, pairing him with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, all because Tyrese Maxey was a late first-round draft pick and had a insignificant cap hold, or a much, a reduced cap hold figure, and they waited to extend Tyrese Maxey to give him his rookie scale max extension, and that allowed them to have the financial flexibility to go and sign Paul George outright. So that is the crux of the argument. That is why the Houston Rockets are more than likely not going to extend Alperen Sengun this offseason, is it preserves that financial flexibility moving forward. It is not an insult to Alperen Sengun. It is not because the organization does not believe in him. It is not because he hasn't earned it. It's not because he's not the most talented player on the roster. And there's a subsection of very vocal fans who feel incredibly slighted by this notion that the organization is not about to just hand him, this fat contract on a silver platter. And again, I will make the argument that this is, for Alperen Sengun, I would hope that Rafael Stone has explained the logistics of this to Sengun and to Jalen Green, of course, about why they're not being extended this offseason. And it's because of the possibility of adding a major piece, just like the Sixers just did with Paul George, next offseason, right? And I made this point on social media, but I'm going to echo it here in the show. If Sengun is the competitor that we really believe him to be, I'm 100% positive that he is 100% on board, knowing that the money, the extension, and the chance at an even better team being built around him will come later on, right? Team building in the NBA is so much about carefully planning out your finances to be contenders with the right window, especially with the new CBA and the second apron and all the financial ramifications that go into these decisions and the powers that be. You have to make the right call in the right window, and you have to maximize those financial opportunities when presented with them. So circling back to what I said earlier about the Pistons and Raptors, right? They're not going to be relevant anytime soon. Those are bottom dweller teams right now. They're going to be bad for at least probably another 1 to 2 years at a minimum, right? The Rockets just went 41-41. They're ready to take that next step into relevancy. And with all the expiring salary that they also have on the roster, north of, $43 million that they could, use outside of Fred VanVleet as expiring contracts this next season, they could open up a ton of cap space next summer and sign a marquee free agent should one present themselves. So that's what this whole discussion is about. It's not an insult to Alperen Sengun. It has nothing to do with that. It's simply just good. It's It's simply just the front office doing their jobs, right? And putting the team in the best possible position to make a splash down the line. So I wanted to address that right here at the top of the show. Wanted to cover that before getting into the free agency stuff, since that has been a topic that has been running rampant amongst Rockets fans in the online space. So coming up, want to get into some of the free agency news for your Houston Rockets, as well as taking a look at the NBA landscape and what it means for the Rockets moving forward, some of the moves being made around the association. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much, I never really want them to stop. But when you got postseason winding down and you get fewer and fewer games and the sports just aren't really sportsing the way you want them to, look, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up big bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. I want to include one more point on the discourse with the extensions for both Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. On the Jalen front, obviously, it's just, I already argued this point, but just come out. He's got to earn it this next season, right? And the benefit of allowing these two guys to go to restricted free agency is, for anybody concerned, if the Rockets don't extend Sengun this summer, they're at risk of losing him next year. That's not how this works. The way restricted free agency works is the Rockets extend a qualifying offer to both Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green. They make them restricted free agents. And then what that means is next summer, if a team rolls up, if the LA Lakers roll up with a ton of cap space for whatever reason and offer a max to Jalen Green, or another team, say the Utah Jazz, whatever, try to max Alperen Sengun, who cares? The Rockets have the right to match any and all contracts for either of those two players, for any of their restricted free agents, and then they stay with the Houston Rockets for another 4 years. That's the beauty of restricted free agency. And that's also the risk when you allow a player who is an unrestricted free agent to test the free agency waters, because then that is the risk of a player walking for absolutely nothing. But that doesn't happen with guys on rookie scale deals. You make them a restricted free agent, you explore the rookie scale extensions next summer, and that's all she wrote. It's simple. So there's no risk of the Rockets losing Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun for nothing if they don't extend them this offseason. I just wanted to include that one more tidbit here. But let's get into some of the free agency news and notes for your Houston Rockets. So very quiet free agency for the Rockets. And this was to be expected, right? This is a Rockets team that largely has made what feels like all of their moves that they're going to make at this point. I think one thing to note is, right, the Steven Adams trade from the middle of the season at the trade deadline this past year, that should be and could be viewed as more or less an offseason move that was made in the middle of the season because they weren't going to be able to hold on to and utilize the salary from the Victor Oladipo contract otherwise, right? He was an expiring deal. So they had to do something with it in the middle of the year. Steven Adams obviously was a pickup that didn't impact the team at all this past season, but obviously a guy that the Rockets have high hopes for, being the new backup center behind Alperen Sengun this upcoming year. So even though the Rockets have had a relatively quiet free agency period off season so far, aside from just signing Reed Shepherd and then they made the little deal for AJ Griffin, I think if you view it in that light, view Steven Adams as an off-season acquisition, then you can look at this team and say, okay, well, alongside, drafting Reed Shepherd, you've got Steven Adams coming in, you're going to get a healthy Tari Eason, knock on wood, right? Those are some major additions to this Houston Rockets team, as well as just the internal growth of everybody else on the roster getting better. Another summer working with the coaching staff and Ime Udoka. Hopefully everybody taking another step forward in their respective development timelines. It's going to be great next season. But to the actual free agency news, the one name that the Rockets did bring back, even though there was some speculation that he wouldn't be returning, is Aaron Holiday. First off, I like the fact that the Rockets brought back Aaron Holiday. I thought he stepped up in a really big way this past season for the Rockets. He was supposed to be, your third string insurance policy kind of guard, and he stepped into a pretty pivotal role for the Rockets team because they needed a tertiary ball handler outside of Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. There were definitely maybe some times where there was a little bit too much Aaron Holiday going on for my liking on the court, but at the end of the day, he filled his role perfectly, played strong defense, knocked down open shots, ran the offense when Fred and Jalen weren't on the floor, or when those guys needed a breather or needed some pressure taken off of them. And ultimately, he's just a really good guy, great locker room presence, very strong veteran to have around these young guys, and being able to bring that continuity from last year's team back into the fold. Now, the one unique thing here is the Rockets decided to re-sign Aaron Holiday on a 2-year, $10 million contract, and it was confirmed by the Chronicle's Jonathan Fagan that year 2 is a team option. So what does that mean for the Rockets? One, they basically gave him a slightly beefier deal, rather than just giving him a vet minimum. They beefed up his contract a little bit to make it a tradable asset, right? A $10 million contract, or at least a $5 million deal, effectively an expiring contract, since next year is a team option, gives the Rockets even more financial flexibility to aggregate certain players together and be able to make a move either this offseason or potentially at the NBA trade deadline if something materializes down the line. And it's worth noting that right now, when you look at all the contracts that the Rockets have, Aaron Holiday's freshly signed, ink still not dry, 2-year, $10 million deal. That's $5 million right there for this upcoming season. It's an expiring contract. Jock Landale, expiring deal as well. Jeff Green, expiring deal. Jae'Sean Tate, expiring deal. Steven Adams, another expiring deal. You combine all this salary together, the Houston Rockets have roughly $42.2 million in expiring salary this upcoming season. That also does not include Fred VanVleet's massive $42.8 million expiring contract. That is an absurd amount of money. That's $85 million that the Houston Rockets could have coming off the books this upcoming offseason. So to piggyback off of the point that I was making in segment 1 about the financial flexibility for the Houston Rockets, you couple that $85 million with the financial savings that the Rockets will have by not extending Alperen Sengun right now, and the delta between what he would make if you gave him a rookie scale max right now versus his actual cap hold if the Rockets just let him go to restricted free agency. The Rockets, I think, are projected to have roughly, or I want to say, I take that back. I can't say roughly $100 million. I'm doing the math wrong here, but they potentially could have a ton of cap space, at least enough for one max salary player, potentially being able to move some things around financially to open up a second max slot next summer if they really wanted to, right? If they deemed that was the direction that they wanted to go. And there's two kind of pillars of this era under Rafael Stone and his stewardship of the Rockets front office and the organizational direction. And that is, they've been patient throughout this rebuilding process, and they've also maintained a lot of optionality, right? That's I think kind of the two key pillars, or two of the key pillars of this rebuilding process for the Houston Rockets. So I like the position that the Rockets have found themselves in. If a star player shakes loose at some point midway through the season, the Rockets are in prime position to be able to package some of that expiring salary, as well as maybe one or two of the young players on the roster, if necessary, to make a push for a star level player. It doesn't seem like any of the stars that the Rockets would be willing to target, or any of the stars that match the Rockets timelines, right? There's been a lot of reporting and some evidence, and my understanding of the situation is that, names like, again, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Zion Williamson, these are names that the Rockets would absolutely entertain trading for, cashing in some of their future assets for. But it seems like all three of those names, at least for now, are going to be staying put, staying in place with their respective teams. But we know that the NBA, the landscape can change at the drop of a hat, right? And at a moment's notice, one or multiple of those guys could become available to the Rockets as early as next trade deadline. And when, or if that happens, when that happens, whatever, the Rockets are in prime position to be able to exercise the use of a lot of this expiring salary and make some moves to be able to add significant pieces to this roster. But the way that it looks right now is the Rockets are poised to basically just run it back this next season, right? They're running it back with the additions of Reed Shepherd and Steven Adams, hopefully a healthy Tari Eason. And this is going to allow guys like Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun to prove here in year 4, right? Jalen belongs, right? Cement yourself. come out of the gate, be consistent, prove that you belong on this team for the long term. For Alperen Sengun, level up again, right? Prove that you're worthy of that. Not even prove, he is worthy of the max extension, but cement yourself as one of the blossoming young stars of the NBA, right? Can he level up again? Can he work on the shooting? Can he get even more improved as a defender? What do we see out of year 3 for Jabari and Tari, right? How good do Amin Thompson and Cam Whitmore look coming into year 2? How does Reed Shepherd's development go in his rookie season? All these important storylines to follow for the Rockets. So I just wanted to highlight there and point out that that was probably some of the reasoning, the logic for why Aaron Holiday was re-signed to the deal that he was signed to, why the Rockets paid him a little bit more than what would have been the vet minimum. It's also very possible that the Rockets just wanted to have Aaron Holiday back in the fold, and there might have been a few other teams out there inquiring about his services, and so maybe the Rockets would have to, had to outbid a little bit because there might have been some other teams, some more contending level teams that were, inquiring about getting Aaron Holiday into the mix. The Rockets did tap into their biannual exception to sign Aaron Holiday, so Aaron Holiday is Bay now on the roster. But with that, that's it. That's all we've seen from the Houston Rockets. Those are the only moves they've made so far. But I think it's going to be important, and we're going to do this in a second, is taking a look at the landscape of the NBA, seeing what some of the other moves of other teams around the association have made here in free agency and how that impacts the Houston Rockets moving forward. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so taking a look around the NBA landscape and some of the other free agency moves, the biggest one, the marquee free agent, if you will, in question, Paul George was kind of the holdup for NBA free agency, as well as Klay Thompson being one of the other names out there. And both of whom, new teams. So Paul George moving on from the LA Clippers, moving out east to the Philadelphia 76ers. And then the Golden State Warriors losing Klay Thompson for nothing in return. There's just trying to take a look at kind of the lay of the land, right, in the Western Conference. We can kind of start near the top, right? Take a look at OKC, right? OKC got better. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein. They are going to have another year of growth and development from the young guys. They drafted Nikola Topic, TBD on how good he's going to look. They got Alex Caruso, right? OKC was already the number 1 seed in the West, and they likely got significantly better with those acquisitions. So OKC is going to be a dominant force in the West for years to come. I think you can make the argument Dallas got better. Najee Marshall added, lose Derrick Jones Jr., but they added Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is not the Klay Thompson of old. He's still a Rockets killer. So damn, it's going to be really upsetting to see Klay Thompson in a Mavericks jersey still lighting up the Rockets at Toyota Center as he is wont to do. But so I think OKC and Dallas both got better. And hey, that was already, a pair of the teams near the top of the Western Conference standings in the first place. Minnesota, I think you can make the argument, right? Minimal addition there. Getting Rob Dillingham is going to help them. They haven't done anything crazy, no crazy shakeups. All their key pieces returning, another year of growth. So we'll see what happens there for Minnesota, kind of TBD. Denver losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope seems rather significant, especially since they don't have a reliable pathway or avenue to replace his production or his minutes. And there's even some rumors about Nikola Jokic's desire to play with Russell Westbrook, who opted into his player contract with the Clippers, but the Clippers are now looking to trade him and move him to another organization. So TBD on whether or not we see Russell Westbrook in a Nuggets jersey next year, which would be just one of the most absurd things ever. But and add Jokic to the list of a long list of stars who convinced themselves that they could fix Russ or change Russ or get him to adapt to a system around them. And I like Jokic and I like the Nuggets, so I'd hate to see that blow up in their faces. But from a Rockets perspective, more power to them. Bring Russ in, and hopefully it's chaotic and awful, because then that's another team that is going to potentially have some issues this upcoming season. But I think the Nuggets clearly got worse, losing a starter. The Clippers easily got worse, right? They lost Paul George, and they're not going to be the same level of team that they were this past season. They were able to retain James Harden. They pivoted and they were able to take Derrick Jones Jr. away from the Dallas Mavericks. They also signed former Houston Rocket Kevin Porter Jr. So KPJ is back in the NBA. No further comment on that. So make of that what you will. But the Clippers clearly got worse. Golden State clearly got worse, losing Klay Thompson, not being able to recoup anything of value for him. Although it's worth noting that the Warriors have turned their attention, and all the reporting suggests that they are trying their absolute hardest to acquire Lauri Markkanen from the Utah Jazz. Now, if the Warriors are able to get Lauri Markkanen without giving up too much in the way of, talent, whatever, like if they can somehow field a big three of Steph, Lauri Markkanen, Draymond Green, and still 2 or 3 other pieces around them, then the Warriors, I think, are still going to be in that Western Conference play-in territory next season. But if they don't make any moves, if they're not able to upgrade their roster in any meaningful fashion, then I think the Warriors are easily a team that got significantly worse by losing Klay. The Lakers are kind of another gigantic question mark. LeBron James was, reportedly willing to take a massive pay cut for the Lakers to go out and sign literally anybody, and everybody has turned the Lakers down at this point. DeMar DeRozan remains their one Hail Mary play to try and pair another top-end talent with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So whether or not that happens, still kind of TBD. And then, they added Dalton Connect via the draft. I don't know, not a lot going on in LA to be excited about. And also, still don't know what JJ Redick's going to look like as a coach over there. So honestly, Lakers are another pretty massive question mark in the West, although they weren't that great this past season in the first place. So, are they another team that is possibly going to regress in the Western Conference? The Phoenix Suns, everybody is, walking on eggshells in that situation, because we don't know how that's going to look with Booker and KD and trying to run it back. And they're making some little signings, right? Mason Plumlee, I believe, Malik Beasley was another signing that they just made, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going off rip here. So they've made a couple little pickups here and there to try and flesh out their roster as best they can around their big three that they're kind of stuck with right now. With I guess I don't even know if we can call Bradley Beal a big three at this point, but Phoenix, a possible team for some regression this next season. Now, looking at the actual standings from this past year, I do think that if you go out west and try and figure out like where the Rockets are going to be able to go, who they're going to be able to essentially leapfrog, you look at the Rockets and the Grizzlies as the two teams who didn't make the playoffs this past season, who didn't make the play-in tournament, as teams that are looking to take that next step forward. I say step forward. For the Grizzlies, they just want to get back into the picture. Now, Grizzlies, health permitting, obviously, they picked up Zach Edey in the draft. They still have some question marks about their center position. I doubt they're going to just roll out Zach Edey as their starting center this next year. They could potentially be targeting Nikola Vucevic from the Chicago Bulls, because the Bulls are trying their hardest to offload Zach LaVine and Vucevic. So maybe that's a target that the Grizzlies decide to go after. We'll see there. And then I almost forgot. I got 2 other teams in here to talk about in the Western Conference: the Pelicans and the Kings. The Pelicans still don't have a replacement center for Jonas Valanciunas, who left to go to the Washington Wizards. And then the Sacramento Kings adding Devin Carter in free agency, effectively just kind of running things back. The Pelicans adding DeJounte Murray, losing Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance Jr. I don't know. Pelicans are a little bit clunky right now, depending on what they do at that 5 spot. There's some reporting that they might try and go after Brook Lopez, which would be an insane addition for the Pelicans, right? Have that spacing all around Zion. That's how you maximize his ability on the basketball floor. I think Pelicans and Kings likely kind of stay the course and, match their production. The Kings had dealt with a lot of injuries this past season, though, so I think you can make the argument that if they have better health, they'll be back more so towards their production from 2 seasons ago, where they finished as the 3rd seed in the Western Conference, although that year was relatively weak across the board. I think it was only 2 teams that year that won 50-plus games. Maybe it was 3 teams. So we'll see kind of how the West ultimately shakes out. But when you look at teams that have a very distinct possibility of dropping or plummeting in the standings out west, if you will, I think it's very easily the Nuggets could play a lot worse in the regular season. They got worse. The Clippers got worse. The Suns are kind of a big question mark and a powder keg ready to just backfire tremendously. The Lakers, very similar situation there, and the Warriors. And that's more than enough ground for the Houston Rockets to make up and get themselves into the playoff picture this next season. I know there, at various points, we've kind of posited the question, how do the Rockets make it into the playoffs this next year, right? Which teams in the Western Conference do the Rockets have a chance to be better than this next year? And while I don't know if the Rockets are going to be able to guarantee themselves a top 6 seed this next season and a guaranteed playoff spot, I do think they have a chance to at least be good enough to be in the top 10, right? That's the next step in the linear progression of this Rockets team, is be somewhere in that play-in tournament bracket at the very least. I'm thinking the Rockets have a realistic chance to be somewhere in that 6 to 8 range. 5 to 6 seed if things go really, really good for the Rockets, but at least in that 7 to 10 range for sure. I mean, this past season alone, they were giving the Warriors a run for their money there at the end of the year. And I do think that if the Warriors don't make any significant moves, they're probably out of the contention bracket. They're probably out of the playoffs completely. One significant injury to either LeBron James or Anthony Davis, and the Lakers are suddenly out of the running. TBD on what DeJounte Murray looks like with the Pelicans. That's kind of an interesting pairing with Zion Williamson, kind of a clunky fit. We'll see how the spacing looks over there and what other moves the Pelicans are going to ultimately make. But I do think there are more than a few teams in the Western Conference that have made moves or have lost players that ultimately benefits the Houston Rockets and their playoff aspirations for next season. So with that, just wanted to touch base there, hit on some of the other little, free agency news and notes and signings going on around the association. But be on the lookout for our next episode. It'll be my kind of thoughts and reaction to Reed Sheppard's introductory press conference with the Houston Rockets. Some fun little moments had in that press conference. We learned a little bit about Reed, about his upbringing, about his mentality towards the game. Got a chance to catch up with both his parents, Jeff and Stacy Sheppard, former players themselves. He was brought up in a basketball household, although he wasn't ever pressured into playing basketball. So I'll be running that back here on the show for anybody who missed it playing live, and it'll be posted and all that good stuff. But with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. I'm curious your thoughts on the extension discussions for Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Let me know your thoughts on those in the YouTube comments. Give me who had the best NBA free agency period. Actually, you know what? I'm going to answer that question myself. Sorry, terrible tease. The OKC Thunder had the best NBA, free agency, offseason, whatever. They got the best. Who had the second best after the OKC Thunder? Because the Thunder made some really, really massive moves. Shout out to former Houston Rocket and G League Viper Isaiah Hartenstein for securing the absolute bag, getting paid almost $30 million a year to be the new center for the OKC Thunder, the Twin Towers lineup, if you will, with him and Chet Holmgren over in OKC. But with that, go drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Come say go Rockets, all that good stuff. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube, just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review helps us out a ton. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.